Hello, everyone. How are you all? Has it been a good day so far?
Yeah.
Good. Well, we may have a little rain coming in. If the rain comes in, were you here yesterday? Got a little rain? Remember, it cooled us off. Me and one of my friends ducked into a tent, and we got to know some strangers real well. I encourage that. We'll all be here together. Whatever ends up happening, it looks like if some rain does come, it's going to pass through. I want to mention first, I was told yesterday, I forgot to talk about this, this has been a wonderful Homestead Festival, and we're so excited that you're all here, but I also want to encourage you this next year. We've already got tickets on sale for the 2026 early bird tickets. I think they're $55 if you get them this weekend. So if you're interested in coming, there's QR codes on these monitors and also in your program. We would love to have you come back this year. It's sold out pretty early, so keep that in mind. This is a panel. This is the panel I've actually been waiting to do for a while. I've been talking about it. I've been thinking about it. I've been to some other communities, some other conferences. We've begun having these conversations about community. And what we really want to do is just have, like I said, a conversation about community. In my own life, I'm surrounded by people who are interested in community. I host a Bible, it's not a Bible study. I host a group of men who get together every Wednesday. We've got together for the last 9 years, pretty much every Wednesday, and we just sit and have coffee. Sometimes it's 35 guys, sometimes it's 5. And most of those men would say, this is the greatest part of my week, every week. This is my favorite thing. It's changed their lives because there's something inside of them that so desperately wants to share life together. And we only share an hour and a half over some coffee, and it's most of us separating out. We know we want something deeper than that, but we don't know how to get it. We don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to move towards it. We don't know how to pray for it. We don't know what it looks like. And so from there, I've seen it in so many people. I've had friends tell me, hey, I'm going to get together with I got 5 or 6 guys, and we're going to meet up tonight, and we're going to talk about getting 40, 50 acres of land, and we're all going to move together on one piece of land. Would you like to come to the meeting? And I'd say, I didn't say this, but I said, that's great. That's great. But the reason is I know you, and this is not going to work out. And it's not because of you, but I also know me, and this is not going to work out. Because I've been in search of community for a long, long time in my own life. It starts as a search, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's a search for family. The family that maybe you didn't have, that you want to have, that you wish you had, that you have down inside of you. All those kinds of things. It's a journey towards something. But then even in the family, that family's looking for something bigger than just a family. They're looking for a family of families. And I've made step after step after step of trying to figure out how to get there with family and with community. And with every step, it's been a misstep. Not even close. Every time I felt like I made a step in the right direction, it turns out to be the wrong direction. Every time I thought I helped, I hurt. Every time somebody else thought they helped, they hurt. And I've been deliberately trying, and I'm guessing I'm not the only person doing this. And so today, I've got some of my friends together, and it's kind of a smattering of things. There's different ages and different stories. But in my journeys, looking around and visiting lots of places and being in homesteading, I've been looking for a community and for communities that are sustainable. It's one thing. It's not enough for me to have a garden that's flourishing. I want a family that's flourishing. I want a family of families that are flourishing. I want to be part of something greater that's alive and vibrant. It doesn't matter how great my garden is. It doesn't matter how much food I'm raising on my own. If this is failing, if I don't have a culture to bring my child or my children up into, for me, I have nothing. And so I've been seeking it for a long time. And through my journeys, I've met some people in different places who have found a way to do community. There are many other folks out there that are doing it and doing it in different ways, but there's some things that are common that I found in meeting them and talking to them and getting to know them that have caught me off guard, that are actually the missing pieces why every time I take a step, it's the wrong step. And so I brought them here today. I'm going to introduce you. Some of you already know who Rory Groves is. Rory is in Minnesota. He has 6 children. He has a wife. He's not only got the same name as me, he has a wife with the same name. And he was an IT programmer for years and years and has been homesteading for the last 10 or 15 years, something like that. Very, very passionate about the family. And he has his own journey of how he has been desperately, from the moment I met him, the first time I met him, he's looking for community. The first time I met him, he said, I met some of these guys. I've been to these places, and he goes, it's a miracle. First thing he said to me, it's a miracle. It can't happen. That's the first thing he said to me. And it's 2 years later, and it's still a miracle, and we're still trying to figure out how do we do it within our own lives. And it's inspiring. And so Rory's situation, he can talk about it a little bit, but to give you a little smattering of this, Rory is not in community yet. He's tried, he's done house churches, and they end with terrible crashes and burns. And they're homesteaders. They care about it. They love the same things. And they're still by themselves. Matt Brandstadt grew up. His dad was seeking something. He lives in Montana in a small community. There's 150, maybe 200 people there. And they're all they're not all living in the same land, but they all are sort of sharing in a larger vision. And are you 40, 41, 42? And it's the only thing he knows. He's seen the rest of the world, but it's all that he knows because his dad, 50 years ago, made a journey and said, him and his mom and dad said, I want something more for my child. Now he has his children and grown children, and they're not that far away from children of their own. But he has broken off and started with a bunch of other people a much smaller community, and it's a brand new transition that they're figuring out how to do. Grady Phelan is from Texas, and Grady has a story that I'm going to share a little bit of that with you, but Grady has been part of the community for 7 years, and before that he was farming and he was an apprentice or worked with Joel Salatin for years and years, and he was doing a lot of this stuff, but something inside of him called out for more for he and his wife and his children. And so for 7 years, he has found community, and it has changed his life. And Butch, on the end here, Butch Tyndall, he's from another era before us, and he was seeking it probably in the 70s. I said, has it been 35 years? He said 50 years. He said, I didn't find it right away, but for 35 years, he's been involved and he's seen it. And so it is not about Montana or Texas or Minnesota or Tennessee or somewhere else or a particular denomination, or faith is going to be a big component about it. But it's really just a conversation on what does it take? Because it takes a lot more than just getting together with your friends and neighbors and deciding you're going to homestead together. 99.9% of times, that's a great way to never, ever speak to each other again. It just happens because we're human and we're filled with pride and arrogance. So let's start with you, Rory. Share a little bit of your journey, because Rory's very well-spoken. He's not woke. Very woke. Sorry, Rory. He's very well-spoken, and he's very passionate about this. And share some of how you got here and your experiences so far.
Well, my wife and I started a ministry specifically on this topic of gather. It's called Gather and Grow. And you know, what Rory's speaking about is how do we gather like-minded families together? How do we build community around some of these principles that we feel stewardship of the earth, and family economy is a big emphasis of ours. It's trying to find ways to bring the family back together. And along with that is the same thing is could we go deeper in our churches? You know, we've been faithful members of churches our whole lives, both my wife and I. My wife's Dad is a pastor. My parents aren't pastors, but I have pastors in my family. So we're very devout and loyal church members. But one of the things that we just always felt was that it wasn't going far enough. Like we had nice times on Sunday morning, but there wasn't the rest of the week. There wasn't the life together component. It just wasn't going very deep. And so we started down a path that led us into a home church, which was, for us, a very exciting new direction because we were for the first time experiencing the depth of genuine community and with very like-minded families. And just to give you an example, we'd meet on a Sunday morning and just do very simple worship together. We would have a potluck meal afterwards. The kids would get out and play all afternoon. A typical Sunday, we would be together 4 to 6 to 8 hours, just depending on the week. And it was very rich, Rory. It was so meaningful. And we did that it was like that for about the first year. And then conflicts began to emerge. And the thing that I learned through that, by the end of the second year, it was all the way dissolved. We no longer are in that house church anymore. And it's been a very difficult experience for us to go through. But one of the things that I wanted to point out in that is going into it, your concept of community and what you think it is, there's a whole lot of definitions of community. If I meet, like you say, if I meet for a brother down for coffee at the coffee shop, I can say I have community. I get together once a week for community. But when I think of community, of what it could be, I think of all from that aspect all the way to what's described in the book of Acts, where you had the believers were gathering together daily in the temples. There was prayer, fellowship, the apostles' teaching, the breaking of bread. There was this life together. And I couldn't find where that was going to fit into the overall picture until we had gone down the house church. But what I discovered was that even if you get like-minded people together, and on paper they're solid families, they're Bible believing, they're homeschooling their kids, which is in our case, you can get everything that lines up on paper. You can get those families together, and it can really crash and burn. Why is that? Why is this so? And they all want community. They're all willing to pursue this stuff. Why is it so hard to get to that deeper place of community? And I think that's been part of our journey. What we have been learning, discovering, and asking. We feel like it was easier, when it was just an idea. But having walked through it, we realized, the problem is that it's not what we have in common on paper, not the attributes, but it is what we have in common. In that it's the human heart. No matter where we are all starting from a broken human condition, and eventually, whether it's your own family or whether it's a church family, that's going to manifest itself. And if there is not a love that is more powerful to outweigh what's in the human heart, it is going to dissolve, and it's going to take down what potential there could be for community.
Great English. We'll kind of go skip around a little bit. You had your own journey that led you to a place where you and your wife really are thinking about, do we just want a farm and that's all that we need? We'll just raise our kids and put them in public school. Talk about that, how you came to a place where you realized you needed more than what most people might be looking for.
So just a little background, I grew up on a ranch in Oklahoma, went to school, went to college, and in college realized how much agriculture really drew me in. And so I'm making a very long story very short. But I ended up at Joel's, met my wife there. We were there with him for 3 years. And I remember a point in our life where we made the decision that we felt like agriculture was so important that we would move wherever we needed to move so that we could be in agriculture. And we did that for a time. But what we failed to understand was that agriculture in and of itself was not sustaining what we needed. And so we bumped into some friends down in Texas, and that's where we started to see people who, more than just agriculture, they also lived life together. There was something deep in their relationships that sustained more than just their food, their need for food and nourishment of their body, but I needed something deeper. I needed something to help my heart, to help my soul, to help me make it through life in general. And so for us, I remember, I'll never forget, we were driving down our driveway, and I said, honey, if we really believe what we say we believe, what does that look like? Where will we live? How will we act? What will we do? How will we raise our children? And from that point on, everything shifted, and we realized that we needed more than just our family. We needed more than just each other. We needed more than just our children. We needed more than just agriculture. We needed people. And we needed people that we could trust, and we needed people that could trust us, and that somehow that would have to happen. And at that time, we had met a people that had been dedicated to that for nearly 50 years. And so we were blessed to be able to experience that and then come into a relationship with these wonderful people. And now we're able to endeavor in that same task that is not easy, but because we have each other, and because we have this reality that I need your perspective, I need you to speak into my life, and I open myself up to that, then I can move through conflict, and I can get the help that I need, and we can live life together in harmony and peace, so that in unity.
How long has that been now?
It's been about 7-8 years.
Has it been 6 or 7 kids?
We have 7 children, yes, sir.
7 children. And how has it been? 7 years, the life before then and life now. Can you imagine it?
Oh no, you know, does anybody have any friends that you met 2 years ago that you feel like you've known them your whole life? Do they have those friends? That's the way we feel about our life. We've only been on this journey seeking rich, deep community with people for 7-8 years, and yet it feels like it's been my whole life. And so do our friends. They feel like we've been their friends for our whole life. So, yeah, that's right. Butch and I are very good friends.
Butch, would you share a little bit of your story, how you found in your heart a yearning for something greater than that led you to people again?
Well, I'm the old guy, so does that mean I get more time because I've got more?
No, sir.
No, sir. It actually goes back many years. I guess when you get my age, you begin to look back on your life and reflect and think about things and how did I get here? I mean, that's a question that I ask myself a lot. You know, I have 7 children, almost 14 grandchildren, wonderful friends, and you just think, how did I get here? And are there things in, as you said, in my heart that led me on this path? And I have to go way back into the early 60s as a small child, growing up in a family that was, every Sunday we got together at my grandmother's house. And we did things together. My cousins were my closest friends. And there was this sense of community, a sense of being together. And then this, some people call it a cultural revolution of the 60s. I can remember things happening. And, you know, my cousins, we were in different schools, and, you know, one set of cousins was actually at a rival high school, you know, where they were our main rivals. But all the other things in the culture, the music, everything began to pull us apart. And so I'm from the 50s and the 60s, mostly the 60s. And there was a longing in a lot of us. We realized things were going off the rails. I mean, I remember very clearly when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and my teacher coming into class and telling us that. I had just seen him with my dad the day before, and he was there in Texas. And I saw him at a distance. I didn't see him close up. And then a few years later, you know, Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, and these things that are happening. And then, you know, what was a seminal event for a lot of us was in 1969. It was called Woodstock. Anybody ever heard of Woodstock? I'm really showing my age here. And and you look at the music and the things that, Joni Mitchell wrote the song Woodstock, and it says, we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. There's this longing and this desire. We knew we had lost something, but how do we get back? How do we get there? And it was not, for me, it was not necessarily at that time a journey of faith. There were a lot of folks that were trying to have community. I think back in coming out of the 60s and the 70s, there were like 700 communities across the United States. Of course, most of them are no longer in existence. But, people were trying to be together too. And they all fell apart. Most of them fell apart. But that was my journey, longing for that, longing for something, that we realized we had left behind, we were missing. And so my wife and I, in college, we met in college, and we had a conversion experience. And our life began to change, but we didn't find satisfaction in a lot of the churches that we would go to. And there was a longing. We read about the early church in Acts, and what did that mean? How did those people live together? What was that? And so when we moved to Waco, we gathered with a number of friends, and we had community for 10 years. But it was similar to Rory's story. It fell apart, and it was very hard, very difficult, very painful. And it was in that period of time that I met a community that I'm now part of, that was 35 years ago. And we can talk more about some of these things, about how did, what was the difference in like your home church and the first community that we were a part of that failed? Why did it fail?
And we'll talk more about just the idea of community, because in the culture today, in the consumer culture we're part of, everybody seems to be in community. But it's like we're all being sold community. I'm a golfer. Like, that's my community. I wear these hats. I wear these kind of t-shirts. I wear these kind of shorts. I do this on the weekends. That's how I see myself. I'm a biker. I'm part of the tattoo culture. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm a Titans fan. It just goes on and on and on. And they're kind of consumer communities is really what they are. Everyone wants to spend money, to come together and consume and all that stuff. And most of the time, they can be fun, and it does kind of bring us together, but they're not sustainable. We're not really together. And so we all have this longing inside. And so we start moving towards wanting to figure out how to do that, as you guys have been doing. And then someone like Matt, you grew up, I know your dad real well, but you've grown up not just in community, because I want to explain for a minute what I've been looking for a long time. If I had to really say it, it would be fruit. I just don't see any fruit anywhere. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, the main place I don't see any fruit is in my own life. Not any real fruit. And I'm someone who's evidently done well. But there's no real fruit there. Nothing sustainable. And I started looking for it in all these different places. And when I met Matt and some of these other folks, I just started trying to figure out what in the world is this that they're doing? They are doing community, but what's the result of community? And it's fruit. It's this beautiful, this outpouring of love and work and fellowship and kindness. I mean, it's just crazy. So let's speak about that. You've only grown up in it in your whole life. And then what would it be? Not 5, 6, 7 years ago or something, you've been part of like taking a smaller group and creating can you produce fruit in a new area? Or is the only fertile ground where he lived or where someone else lived? Can you talk about that, growing up that way? And then also because you have lots of new people that are sort of finding their way in because they're looking for something deeper, they're looking for fruit.
So
I'm the fourth generation of a ranching family out of Colorado. And when it comes to a certain form of community, I would say my family had succeeded. We could grow cows, we could grow vegetables, we could process the food, we could kind of run that whole gauntlet. But the thing that my father said drove him toward looking for community is he wanted to homeschool, and the homeschooling community was pretty small in that region, actually kind of non-existent at that time. And so just the process of trying to figure out what system you would use, what curriculum and that kind of thing was a huge task for a family coming from our angle. And so my father joined a community on the western slope of Colorado, and I kind of had a backseat position of kind of seeing him trying to figure it out together with friends like Butch, where you're trying to determine what your community would look like. You're trying to determine what your faith-based will be like. And humans are kind of humans wherever they are. And I know we just naturally get along great. We have all history to show that. But my dad was trying to find that chemistry of faith and just a common care. And so growing up, it was fun watching my dad and Butch work together on a farm. Here you had kind of this bigger rancher from Colorado, and then you had Butch. He says a hippie, I didn't say that. But you had Butch from Central Texas, and there were two things that you didn't do growing up in the Branstad four-generation family, and number one was don't move to Texas. So that was a problem to overcome. But no, just seeing the friendship and the collaboration between my parents and Butch and Diane, that was really amazing. And seeing them kind of wade through those tough decisions that could have brought them to a fork in the road, just bringing them closer and closer and closer, and obviously having different views of particular, just seeing them work toward unity, that was a lot of fun. But then later in life, my wife and I, like 7 years, actually just over 5 years ago, moved to Montana to start another community. And you know, I would say the fundamental that you have to have in starting that is a common faith, a common care, a common love that says the Lord really has given us a mission here and unity is really possible. And seeing the example of that and some of the older folks I was around, I have to say has been the biggest comfort for me, and saying it doesn't really matter what terrain you go into. It doesn't matter if it's swamps or mountains or something in between. That common loving care has to be the groundwork you build off of. And all the amazing gifts that you see come out of the woodworks is really amazing. So, what would you say some of the unusual fruit? Anybody can speak. Some of the unusual fruit. We know the world's fruit. I have a big house. I drive a really nice car. I've got a lot of money in my bank account. I never grow old. You know, I've been able to somehow have some help, and I never have to grow old. I never have to grow up. I can give my kids anything they want, and they don't have to do anything. Like we know the normal kinds of fruit, but what's some of the unusual fruit that you've seen that true community can bring? Go ahead, Rory.
I had the opportunity to visit Homestead Heritage a couple of years ago. You guys invited me down to share a little bit about what I had been teaching and writing about, and that was my first experience with an intentional community up close. It was the whole time I kind of had my my radar up, and kind of looking for the problematic areas that would confirm that this doesn't actually work, that this is actually just a scheme. Because you just hear so many bad examples. I mean, what did you say, 700 some intentional commune communities back in the 70s, and then probably less than 1% of them are still around. I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but it's not a very good success rate. So that's what I had ever heard of intentional communities. And so to see one that was actually working multi-generationally into the third and fourth generation was really a profound experience. I would say a turning point in my life. You know, and I think I wanted to come back to this definition of community, because until you see something, you don't know what's possible. And a lot of us have blinders on. There are certain things that we just don't know that there's another way. And our family found our way into the family economy because someone shed a light on that for us a number of years back, and I didn't know that was an option anymore. But it is. And it just took one family to show me that that's still an option. It took me one community to show me that, no, this is possible. And so I would say, in terms of your question, fruit, at the end of the week, so I'd spent a couple days, there was a conference, I shared on one session on the family economy, got to know a lot of really neat people. But at the end of the week, there was a concert where all the children in the community were playing music, and playing orchestrations, I guess you'd say. And there was a dinner served, and there was just a really nice banquet at the concert to it. And I was watching these young people, 13, 14-year-olds. I mean, it sounded like, a symphony. We have the Minnesota Orchestra where I'm from. It sounded amazing. I couldn't believe how talented these young people were. And it was so impressive to see that. And I remember speaking to one of the elders of the church, and I said, did you ever imagine that one day, because knowing the background of this church, they started up in New York. I don't want to get on that section, but they started as a church plant, just a couple of families. And I said, did you ever imagine if one day you'd be sitting here watching your great-grandchildren play symphonies together? And I think to me, that would be a test and a measure of community, the real community. It is, will the result of this community, will it be your grandchildren, great-grandchildren playing symphonies together? If you're not in something that's that secure and that sustainable, then I would say that we haven't gotten there yet. That there's still something deeper and something more.
You know, I don't, it's not lost on me that in a culture, for me as a person, and I know you guys know this too, someone who's looking for community, and I know other people are, but as I've begun looking for community, I can't tell you the forces that are pushing against it. I mean, they're pushing so hard against it. And so as we're having a conversation about community, I thought, well, of course, the rain's going to come so hard we can barely hear. And it's the strangest thing for me because I grew up, I church hopped for years and years and years, and I was always looking for my place. Is my place in a church? Is my place in a community? Is the community where I live? Is that community? It's Hardison Mill or Columbia? Or is the community the place where my kids go to school? Is it the other people who write songs? Is that my community? Is it a different church, one that I like better and that I could enjoy more? Anyway, as I began seeking and I started to see all the fruit and the possibilities, mostly for my children, because I'm 60 years old, and what I'm mostly terrified for is our legacy. We have nothing to bring our children. For me, I have nothing to bring my children up into. And when I see what some of these other folks have done and what they have created to bring their children up to do, when you see their kids and meet them, it's unbelievable. But since it's just of all things, it's like the world is going to try and drown out this conversation.
You know, Rory, another way to look at it is that when the Shekinah glory filled the temple, it said it was so loud that they could not minister in the temple.
Yeah.
Maybe we could look at it another way.
Yeah. And so for me, this is just, if you follow my story, it's very complicated, and I'm not perfect with all I do, but the most interesting thing is when I get to a place where it's like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna try and come underneath and come alongside some people who have done this really well, so I don't have to do it all by myself. And I make a decision, and I really give my life to Christ, and I decide to really, really follow Him. Man, that has been so crazy since that moment. And one of the reasons is when you start to think about community, especially in church. And I've been to lots of churches. I've probably gone to 50 churches around here. Some are like 15,000 people. I went to a Cowboy church that has 40 people. It doesn't matter what church I go to. Everybody's fine with it. Unless I get together with a bunch of people and we decide to do life. And now, not only do people have a problem with it, the church has a real problem with it. Because if there's something to this is just my experience, if that were actually how we're supposed to live, then we might have something wrong with just getting together on Sunday mornings and on Wednesday nights now and then. And so it's been so strange to me that everyone around me has reacted as they found out. It's like, well, Rory's looking for community, and Rory's talking to people, and he's heading down a direction. They're going to throw the word cult out just to scare everybody away. They don't ask anything. No one talks to me. No one asks me a question. Nobody does anything. They just read the internet. They just assume that something terrible is happening. And what's the crazy thing is, I'm seeking the best thing for my child, for my children, for my life, for my wife. And there's so many of us doing it. And part of it is in homesteading, we're all moving along the path. And whether you realize it or not, you're becoming part of homesteading. Is our community, right? Where we just get together. 6,000 of us are together this weekend. And we are kind of a community, but not really. We become a community when we start really sharing our lives together. When you can count on me to be at your house when my children have some people around them, and your children have people around them to look up to and say, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be a wife. This is what love means and what marriage means. This is the most important thing for our education. We start to make these choices, and it's challenging for the world. Did we talk about that a little bit? And how strange it is, like, Matt, the second you show up and say, I want to get together with a bunch of people in Montana, it's terrifying for everybody, even though it's the most beautiful thing.
So, I know that most of us know the African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. I think that saying is more true in raising. It's true not just only in raising your children. It becomes even more clear when you step out on a homesteading life journey. And I think that in community, a life of, while fully using your gift set and your talents, there is a real interdependence that is required. And I know there are super duper gifted guys who can kind of frame their whole farm and husband the soil and plant the crops, and they can really do it. I'm not that guy. And I think we have to learn interdependence upon each other. And I think if you look back at early America, there were two primary principles that I think drove them, and it was necessity and their faith. And I think both of those have become more and more challenging over time. And I think that in this day and age, we really have to choose interdependence. We have to choose how we relate to each other and have a strong faith to build on.
And so that's again the example I have seen, and it really is that choice to say, how am I going to allow a relationship of trust to form between me and my friend or whoever it would be, so that we can begin to collaborate to build a better life for us all.
When we talk about community, when I mentioned earlier this idea that why can't we just get together with some of our neighbors and our friends or maybe family members? Why is it that we can't just do that? They like what I like, or they like me, or they live near me. We both like we both like sourdough bread, and we have baby chicks, and we've got a garden and all that. Why doesn't it work? What's the biggest reason community doesn't work? You guys probably all would say the same thing, but what's the biggest reason community doesn't work for people?
Well, I think there was a fellow back in the 1930s, probably some of you have heard of him, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who wrote a book called Life Together. And I'm paraphrasing, but he says, each of us brings into community the seeds of the community's restoration. And what is that? What is that? It's our individual pride, ourselves. And I was at another homesteading conference last year up in Idaho, and a friend of mine was speaking, Jerry Miller, who's Amish, and Jerry began to speak about something that they call within the Amish community of how their life together. It is a German word called Gelassenheit. And that means, he said, I really can't describe it very well. I don't have an English equivalent, but it's like yieldedness. And I agree, there has to be that yieldedness. There has to be. But how do we get to that place? How can we get to where I truly can follow the scriptural injunction to esteem others better than myself? The only way is to have that to decrease so that God can increase. And that's difficult. That's hard. And so each of us has to come to that place of seeing who we are, what we're like, and begin to see that many times the problem is right here. I think about another man in England, G.K. Chesterton, who, when asked the question, which was in 1905, he said, he was asked, what's wrong with the world? And he had a two-word response, dying. Dying, yes sir. And really can come to that place, it can make an incredible difference. And if I could go back to your question about unusual food, and I know other people won't answer, but to me this is the ultimate question. And it's, some of us are maybe a little closer than others, but how are we going to deal with that? How is, and I have been there. Matthew's mother was one of my wife and I's closest friends. She passed away 42, she was 42. But that was what, 20-something, 21 years ago. And I had never seen how you can walk through those difficult situations. But I've seen it now. My best friend, Darla, Matthew's mother, you see that, and then you realize why those things just begin to fade into the background when you understand there is a way to walk with people, to walk with one another, even through the valley of the shadow of death.
Grady, what would you say is the biggest hurdle for community?
Well, I think it's exactly what he's talking about. It's this guy, right? It's pride. It's me. But I'm thinking about how do I describe that? And one of my favorite ways to describe how we get over pride, how we see that we need each other, is if I just hold an object up. And this is not a very good one because it's pretty plain, but I can only see one side of the hat. And so I have no idea what's on the other side of the hat. And so if it had a logo or if it had whatever it had on the other side, I need you to tell me what that is. So I'll turn it around, I'll look at it, and now I can see that side. And so one of the biggest challenges in community is thinking that we're right. And there's a difference between being right and being righteous. And sometimes we're right, but we're not righteous. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm right. Maybe I do see it correctly, but I'm not willing to hear what the other perspective has to tell me. And so then I allow a division to come between someone and myself because I'm not willing to yield. I'm not willing to hear. And one of the biggest challenges in relationship is that, not just community, and with my wife and I, with my children and I, with my friends and I, it's that reality.
You know, that's been my experience as I've sort of looked around, traveled around, met lots of people, is this incredible fruit, which is really love. I mean, the fruit is love. You can just see it. It's all over them. It's just a kindness and a gentleness and a light that you just don't see in the rest of us. We just don't. You see it in the kids. They're 2 or 3 years old. They're 12-year-olds. They're 14-year-olds. They have a light our kids don't have. And I'm not just talking about these folks. I'm talking about folks that are moving in that direction. Not all of them, but some of them, it's possible to have that. And I've found again and again that in order to have that, it reminds me a little bit of homesteading and gardening. It's like we want that life to have happen. But if I'm not mistaken, for that soil to actually have the right organic nature for life to grow, there's got to have been some death that has happened before that to bring this new life out of it. And so that's the process that I have personally been going through, and why, because for me, my own personal journey is, I've been trying to kind of get here for a long time. I think I live in an old white farmhouse because when I was in 4th grade, we moved to a white farmhouse when I was a kid. And I think this is when my mom and dad were trying to get back together. It didn't work out. But it was a sweet memory for me. And I think tucked away, that felt like wholeness, maybe. And without even realizing it, subconsciously, I have been trying to figure out how to get home for 50 years. And so something makes me, instead of a house in a subdivision, buy a farmhouse, buy an old white farmhouse, and it just keeps me going down this road. And my family and I, we've kind of from a broken family, and I broke, my family itself is broken. And so I thought, well, what if I bring my family together? We've always lived separate places, separate states. So God makes it so I can move my family next door, and they can all live near us. And now we're family. No, we just live near each other. We can be family, but that proximity doesn't make you family. What if we work together? What if we can do gardening together? What if we get to 2020? Now we're family. Now we're community. Nope. Now you're just spending time together. What it ended up doing for me, and I'm as guilty as anybody else, it just when you get together with people and you start deciding to really go deep with them, whether they're living right next to you or you're going to pour into it, it reveals the problems inside of you. It reveals how far apart you are and what you don't hold in common. And the thing that's been really special to me is to say, wow, is it possible that we could die to ourselves so that something else could live? And I've seen it happen. And for me, like you said, Rory, early on, it's like, I didn't even know, it's like looking at something beautiful growing that you didn't even know someone could grow. But what if it were alive? What if alive? You see some kids and you go, I don't know where those kids are. Those are from another planet. Those aren't like my kids. No, they're the same. Their soil is just different. And their tending and nurturing what's happening is much different. And so for my journey has been trying to figure out how to do this, and just because I want it doesn't mean the people around me want it. Doesn't mean my neighbors want it. Doesn't mean my family wants it. They might, but it's not really about that. It's about moving there yourself, letting God do a work on you, and taking those steps, right?
I want to go back to something that you guys had said earlier. Yieldedness. Was it the lesson height or something? Lesson height. We know an old order Amish family up that their house, and we visited them and had this long conversation. They had joined the Amish back in the 70s, so they were adults when they joined. It was unusual on the Amish that people from the outside actually joined. But they brought up this whole concept as well, or lesson height. And the wife said that we were talking about the transition they had to make from a modern American life to join the Amish, giving up the electricity and the possessions and the different change of the change of vocation and the the living on the land and the rigorous work. And she said, "Oh, that's the easy part. That's the easy part. It's the stuff inside. It's the yieldedness. That's the hard. That's actually the hard part." And when I was there's a lot of also something back to what Rory had said before. There's a lot of movement right now, even in churches, or at least people in the church, that they're looking at kind of a back to the land resurgence. I've heard many examples of people buying larger tracts of land or intending to buy larger tracts of land, subdivided, have people move on to the land closer. I've heard a lot of homesteading families that are kind of trying to coordinate, maybe doing, let's go out and get some land together.
The answer's no.
Thus he has spoken.
Is that the gong? But, and I was kind of thinking along those lines too. Is that what, if you want community, is that what it is? Is it getting proximate land together, and then you can be together and do life together? Is that what it is? And I remember when I was having a conversation with some of the brothers at Homestead Heritage, because they had done this journey. That's exactly what they did. When I wanted to hear from them, I said, and they kept talking about relationship. No, it's the relationships. And I remember asking to try to clarify it. And I said, "Are you saying that it's not about the land, it's about the relationships?" And they said, I think it was Butch back then, and he said, "It's not about the land until the relationships." So it's the relationships precede all of the rest of it. And there has to be an order and an understanding in that. And they talked about the bedrock of repentance. And that is, always remember that, the bedrock of repentance. You can't build anything substantial in community without first leveling the ground and getting rid of the pride and the ego and all of the selfish ambition. That is what will tear down community if that's not dealt with from the beginning.
And for all of us, it's an ongoing process. It's a daily process. And, lest people think that this is some kind of idyllic place, and I know because sometimes for people from the outside, it may look that way, but we still have a long way to go. We're in the process. We're learning. There's lots of failures, lots of mistakes. But what we've decided to do is to be with one another, work with one another, care for one another, and walk through our failures and our mistakes together. And that even when we fail, it's another opportunity to work through something and to be changed and be changed in the process. So we're still in the process.
I also want to encourage everybody, I want you to take away from today that it's possible. That community is possible on a level that you may have never seen before. It's not about going and being part of something that already is necessarily. It's a matter of reframing your thinking about, are we supposed to be homesteading all by ourselves? Are we supposed to raise our children and homeschool our kids and try and make them or help them grow to be the strongest character? I was just talking to somebody yesterday and they were terrified because they were saying, My kids, I raise them up, and then they become in their late teens and 20s, and they're really good. And what do? They have nowhere to go. They have no life to go to. How are they going to find a spouse that's really, really good? They're going to meet him in church, maybe. But what if a number of you could get together and you begin to grow something much larger, much, much larger than just a garden? It's a family of families. And so that our children have mentors around them more than just the things they see on YouTube, more than just the things that most of our children and all of us are drawn to. There is another way of doing it. And what we want to just talk about is I've seen it's possible. And the thing that I'm most passionate about personally in my own life, I want to grow a garden. I'm going to keep raising beef. We've got turkeys in the brooder house over there. None of that is stopping, but none of it matters. It's not meant to do alone. I don't want to do this alone. And I want to encourage you to think about whether it's supposed to be alone for yourself too.
Hey, if I can just mention here, I'm fully convinced that God has a people for each person. Fully convinced. And the reason I'm fully convinced is because I found it. That's how I know. And I'm fully convinced that all over the world, there's a people for every person. And so I just want to add the encouragement that this is, I'm going to obviously speak from my worldview, this is the design of God. For you to be with each other, living out your life. So, if anything you feel from me, I want to echo what you said. It is very possible.
A long time ago, there was some when they were from Israel, Severe when it came down, and they loved, everybody loves craft villages, and people who do all the woodworking and pottery, and they do all the things that they do, and they love all working together, and they seem to love each other, but I remember Severe said, is it possible that I could just have this, but not the Jesus part? Can we just do it without God and Jesus, just without Jesus? And I think, talk a little bit about that, because I'm pretty sure the answer was maybe, but we haven't seen it. It's not possible, because your pride and your humanity will not let it happen. Right? I mean, that's the idea.
That you just said it. That's what it is. And I haven't seen it in coming out of the 60s, coming and seeing a lot of the, communes and communities. Even some of them that are still in existence, they're not in existence in the same form that they were 50 years ago. And what kind of fruit have they yielded? And you don't really see a lot of their fruit. And so I don't know how it's possible. Maybe it is for me to come to the place where I can be diminished. I can come to that place of wilderness, and that place of brokenness, because that's really our identity, is that we're broken. We're broken people, and we're all being, in that place of brokenness, and we can see that, and we can help one another. And I'm not going to be complete without you, and you're not going to be complete without me. And we need one another to walk through our brokenness together. That is what we have in common.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want you to be thinking, if you have a few questions. We've got a half an hour before this session wraps up. In this particular expression, I should say, in these particular expressions of community that you've done, the two things that become a real problem, right, from the get-go, and let's talk about it, is submission. For men, if my friends or people get together and say, submitting to someone else is a real problem, especially because the world says it's all about me. Everything is about you. So for men, it's a requirement, right? Submission is going to be a requirement. This idea that perhaps You might not like it, but perhaps there's a system in play. In order to work, perhaps the parents are over the children. Perhaps, you might not like it, the husband is over the wife is over the children, the other people are over the husband, and there's a system and a little bit of so that we have some accountability. Now, I like it without it. I want to live that way. But my problem is the fruit of that is chaos. No one's in charge. No one likes each other. Everybody's competing all the time. And that's just in our house. So that's one of the things that has to happen within community is being able, there's a different, just maybe it's not the right word, submission. Another one, let's talk about dress. Sometimes people will look around and go, why would your ladies wear skirts? Why are they wearing pants? I mean, I know the answer to this. For ladies, it might be dress. And this is, like I said, this is an expression. Now, if someone somewhere else goes, well, we're going to wear nothing but spandex in our community. Because we want to look our best. And you know what? We're going to wear more makeup. Just so you know, the reason for these things is the diminishment of us. Is to make ourselves less so that I can make you more. And it's not easy and it's not fun, but it's not like random where it's like, we all watch these things, these documentaries on TV and go, I think I've seen that documentary and this ends poorly. It's not really about that. It's really about the diminishment of us. It's about what if we don't define ourselves by what we look like? What if we don't define ourselves by the jobs that we do, right? And so let's talk about, because those are real hurdles. And your expression, you might be able, I may be speaking wrong here, but your expression, you may be able to do some different things. As I come to understand it, it's hard to diminish yourself when you're trying to lift yourself all the time. And you have to really look at those things and figure out a system that works, right? Who wants to talk about that? Matt, you want to talk about that?
I don't know if you guys have the same problem I've had for my whole life, but I had a tendency to demote myself and overly elevate everybody around me.
Sure.
I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek there. I think there's a general thought process that governs humanity in general, and it's that we tend to want to inflate our value while you kind of decrease the value of everything around you. It's just human nature. I think it's the economy that we live in. I think it's about self-promotion. And I think what should take the place of that in Christian community is that we're all just looking to elevate Jesus. We have a common deity that we're all looking to bring glory to him. And I think the beauty in that is it takes me out of the place of preeminence and it puts me as one of the players in a bigger scheme than just myself. And from that viewpoint, it becomes quite easy to see the gifts in the people around us. Now jumping to, you say dress, I think there's a common misconception, and it's that whatever you do on the outside is simply a form of legalism or something like that. But could it be that the outside could also reflect the inside? That you want your whole life to be lived in such a way as to elevate the one who gave his life for all of us. So I think having that common faith, that common center point, and saying my life is really lived to express him the best I can. And so dress could be a part of that. Really, what would not be a part of that approach, bringing the most glory to our Lord.
What would you say, Rory?
Well, just to weigh in on the comment of it, I think it's worth bringing up that everything you're discussing in terms of submission and authority is right out of the Bible. I mean, chapter and verse. It's just something we don't like to hear about anymore. But I would say that if it bothers you what the Bible has to say about husbands and wives and parents and children and elders and church members, if that bothers you, then I would say, well, what is your source for your ethical stances on things? The Bible is a source that we can go to that has stood the test of time, not only on this time, but in eternal time. But I'm just saying, ask, where am I getting this counter, this resistance to this way? Where is that coming from? Because it has a source. Is it coming from my own opinion of things? How I think the world should be run? Or am I actually being, indoctrinated by the world and its lusts and trying to work out a counter order that's counter to Scripture? Or what's worse, which is the lukewarm version, which is like, I'll take a little bit of this. I like this Scripture. I like the part where God says, I have a hope and a future, and He's going to lead me out of captivity. But I don't really like the Ephesians 5 and 6 part. I don't really want to submit them. I'm going to make that part up and match modernity and take its values and stuff. Jesus says He'll spit you out. Okay? So either the Bible is or it isn't. And from my vantage point, I'm looking at all of these things and all of life and saying, what does the Bible say about it? I want to mold my life after what Scripture says. This is the foundation of my ethical system. So it's kind of here or there, whether or not you like it, whether or not you approve of it. It's what is the source that you're basing that approval or disapproval on.
And at the end of the day, it can't really work without it. You haven't seen it work without it. Let's take some questions. Do you have another microphone or no? Maybe one of these? Okay. Grady, you can take the question and then you might have to answer it while you're standing next to them.
Right here.
So how do you see your lives impacting the lives of those outside of your community? So I think it's evident some of the fruit you're seeing in the community, in your children's lives and their friends, but outside of your community, what does that fruit look like?
She said, I know, how do you see your lives affecting people outside the community?
I think in Scripture we're commanded to do good to all men. So I think our lives as Christians, as a Christian community, should be in service to all of those who would come and partake of just a little bit of the fruit of our lives, and as we also reap from the lives of those who come. So I don't think it should be an us versus them. It should be us all trying to help each other along our journey.
I think also another thing is that it's very clear that people are looking for community. So one of the things that people take away from it is the possibility that it could exist. You're just showing, just like somebody who's looking at you. You were a business person for 30 years, and now all of a sudden something means something different to you. You're growing something beautiful. They might not say, they might be inspired by you and go home and begin to change their life. I think that's part of it. More questions?
It's right here.
First off, Rory, there was a lot of rain came through the tent. You might want to check the bags if you have it on the ground. It might be soaked. My question is, I'm starting my next chapter of retirement. It's 41 years with General Motors. I'm ready. I'm done.
Wow.
In 55 more days. We just bought. We just bought a 14-acre farm with a few cows, a bunch of chickens, and we just got rid of some sheep. But I'm 62, and I'm just stepping into it. My wife has kind of been doing it for about a year and a half. And we're friends with the Garrison. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any more questions? Right beside you.
So I've been a part of several communities that have crashed and
A
burned.
little bit louder.
So I've been a part of several communities that have crashed and burned. So now my question is, starting over, how do you begin? Especially with the one that moved to Montana. How are you willing first to put yourself back out there? Because right now we're just like, hey, we got our farm, we got our animals, our horses are our best friends. Y'all crazy over there, I can say over there. And so it's not something that we want to do, that's just where we're at really right now.
I couldn't hear it that well. Brady, why don't you answer it? You heard right there. You got it, Brady.
I was thinking you were going to say, please repeat the question.
Go ahead, you can answer.
She said that they've been part of communities that have failed. Now they're at a place where they want to start again, but how do you do that? How did you do that in Montana? How did you put yourself back out there to do a new community?
I think what we're building in Montana is based off of several decades of good fruit. But I think my advice would be not to so much focus on the practical aspects of cows and horses toward the front. It would be to go back to scripture and to find a trusted source in which you could begin to define what is the faith ethic of that community going to be. And so I think having that established is really important. I think you'll run into endless opinions without a real good end unless that establishment of faith is foundational to your community.
Another question?
So, sorry. Mine is really simple. How do you meet people? I know we're all here. It's kind of hard to create individual conversations about something like what you're talking about because it's so big.
Yes. That's a good question. I find that a lot too. It's that there's an undercurrent of people talking about it without talking about it, and how do you begin those conversations? For me myself, this is part of it. Like I think we just have to begin talking about it. We have to open ourselves up. Where it's what most of us, it's what we need. So just like I think you could probably, you could start people around you that sense or maybe looking for something a little bit more. And don't be afraid to talk to people first off. People that, whether it's people here or other people around, I think you have to go out on a limb and be able to just start having conversations. Now, Rory knows he's actually hosting in Montana or in Minnesota. He's afraid for me to say this out loud because he's hosting for the first time this summer. He invited a bunch of people to come to lots of his events, but a whole bunch of folks are going to come up there for this weekend to learn more about community. Now, Rory doesn't have community there, but he thinks there's a lot more people up there, so he's got a whole bunch of people coming up, and they're going to have some folks on a panel. I'm going to fly in. Lots of folks are going to go fly in and be part of that. And I think you have to begin to move towards it in your own life. And for me, so I would say, it's a constant thing. I would say I've been a Christian. I bought the farmhouse 26 years ago, so I've been a Christian 25 plus years, and it cost me nothing. I'm a secret Christian. I look like everyone else. I act like everyone else. I mean, when you look around, almost everybody is a Christian. If I pull in the bar, and not that drinking makes you not a Christian. I'm just saying we're all undercover. It cost us nothing to be a Christian. And so for me, the beginning for me was it might have to cost me something. I might have to really look at my life and begin to make some steps to what does my walk look like if I were really, really following him. And then what's happened is everything has exploded around me in some ways. But also, a light has appeared that has made other people come around. As someone mentioned yesterday, our lives Joel said last night, he said, his father had said, our lives should be a burning bush. What we're passionate about should be a burning bush, and people still stop and look at burning bushes. And it has to be down inside of us that we want it, and we have to seek people out. And so I think it's beginning to have these conversations. This is actually a hard conversation because community is actually terrifying. Because you got to remember, if you're like me, the people I love the most that I'm around, we can't talk. There's so many things we can't talk about. We just can't talk. You know what happens in these communities? They have a phrase that they use, which is because in the dying to yourself. Like imagine I'm going to love you and you're going to love me and we're going to do it differently. They have this phrase that they use, which is if we come together and we decide we're going to really do this, I give you permission that the old man in me dies. And I need you. Grady talked about it a little bit. I need you to call me out when I do something wrong because you love me, not because you hate me, but to be able to come up to me and gently say, should we be doing that? But they say it this way. If the old man should arise, you have permission to shoot him on sight. And what it means is that I've given someone permission to help me be a better man, to be a better husband. And I think that's the kind of thing we have to look for is it has to begin with a change in you and a life that begins. That would be what I would say. Would you say anything to that? All right, next question.
I may answer. This is
Where is
way back here.
Oh,
Just as a beginning, pray.
yes, sir.
Ask God, connect me with the people that you plan for me, and God will answer it. So, just as a simple question or answer to the question, I have a question or a comment. Right?
He said I could comment instead of a question. So because you were talking about submission and leadership, and we had a counselor not too long ago that explained it. He said leadership is not from the top down. Jesus told his disciples to follow me. So it's from the front. And when the leader follows Christ, then those behind him follow Christ also.
That's good. Any other sections, or only these people have questions? There's someone on the other side, right there. It's still the same family.
Thank you. So my question is specifically geared around church community. My wife and I have been trying to build up the community within our church and have encountered leadership that at best they don't know what it looks like and have no desire for it, and at worst is openly against some of the very baby steps involved in creating that community. So my question to you is, how do you get to the point where you can let people know what they're missing but in a way that you only have limited people?
Rory's going to be good to talk about that.
I just filled the microphone up. I was an elder at our local church for 8 years. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 years, but I was at the church for 8 years. And I cannot tell you the amount of energy, time, resources we as a leadership team expended trying to foster community within our own local church. And everybody, if you were to ask, almost everybody in the congregation would say the one thing that we want more in this church is keep community. We want more community. Great. Okay, here's a consensus. This is what we can do to serve the people of this church. So we put together small groups, we put together programs, we put together whatever it is, and ask for people to volunteer to open up their homes and start meeting one-on-one. And how do you think the sign-up sheets went when we put them out on the back and announced that we now had these community programs? It didn't go well. Time and time again. They start off, my wife started a Bible study. Let's read through the Bible. She had this idea in 2019. She said, let's do a Bible study where we're all, as a church, we read through the Bible in 1 year together. And then at the end of this year, it'll be 2020, and we'll have 2020 vision for the next year. Isn't that a cool idea? Is that Becca? Totally Becca. Yeah. So we started out first Sunday, and we would get together once a month for potluck, like a breakfast on a Saturday, and just kind of talk about how it's going. So the first Saturday, half the church is there. It's a huge turnout. It's a wonderful time. We all love it. It's going great. We're reading, we're in the scripture. The second month, not quite as many people there, but we still had a great time. The third month, the numbers are dwindling. The fourth month is less. Fifth month is less. We never had the 12th month. Nobody was. This is in a church of about 80 people. And so, what is it about community that just we cannot get it started, even when people say this is the thing we want. And I think one of the things that has helped me understand that, and that's part of the reason, the catalyst that led us onto the home church direction, is because we knew there was more, we wanted to go deeper, and we couldn't find it in a generalized sense. So we went for like a smaller unit to try to pursue it that way. But here's just some observations I've made is the arrangement of our churches today, especially in America, we have the arm's length distance relationship. We'll see it on Sunday, but we're not going to get real deep on the stuff. We're going to stay it's safe. We're at a safe arm's length distance from each other. You don't get to know too much about me, and I don't really want to know too much about you. I do want to know more about you, but not more. So the reality is the churches that we have today are structured around the level of community intimacy that we're comfortable with. And if we don't like it, we go down the street to another church. Where am I going with all this? Well, I'm just saying that a conversation I had, Evan Birdsong, I asked him this very question. He said, the problem is a lot of people say, I got to get me some more community. My life is good, but what I need me a little more community. I want to just add on some community to what I have going on. He said that is completely backwards. Community will not be added onto. You add yourself onto it. It has to be the central thing. You have to be willing to sacrifice. And the sacrifice is really the word that most people are afraid of. It's not authority, it's not submission, it's sacrifice. There's a price for it. But I believe most would say there's a price worth paying.
Yes, sir, Grady.
Do you guys have any good examples of conflict resolution that you've seen be successful and some that have failed?
That's really good, because conflict resolution is a big, big part of it, right?
We have never had any conflict.
Really?
No. Again, I think it returns to if you're going to have true Christian community, I believe it has to start where Jesus, John the Baptist, as well as Peter started. And it does have to be a repentance, as in saying, it's not my will, but your will be done, God. And if you start on that foundation with all your people, and we're all coming at it from that angle, I believe the Lord leads us to unity. And you may think it's red, and I might think it's purple. But I think if we have that common relationship with the Lord and an understanding that says Matthew doesn't get it right every time, and he needs someone to show him the other side of the hat, I believe unity is possible. So yes, the people I've worked with, one has thought we should build a restaurant, another one thought we should do a Woolworths booth. The particulars are somewhat irrelevant if our heart is to seek what the Lord has for us as a group. So I think that foundation of repentance really is more crucial than ever in trying to live out agricultural community.
On a functional level, it really just looks like they're committed to work through it. They really are committed to work through it.
Let me ask a follow-up, a deep add on to that question and say, on the conflict resolution, what stops people from just saying, I don't like you, I'm moving on to the next church, I don't like that pastor, I don't like this relationship, I don't want to work through it, I'm going to just move on. Why wouldn't that happen, as happens in so many other churches?
I think we have to deal with this dynamic fundamentally because we could say the same thing about our marriages, we could say the same thing about our friendships. And I think there has to be a sense of commitment that says the relationship means more to me than being right. I want together we can work through this. And ultimately all community is a family of families as we started out. So I think if we don't deal with this on a fundamental level, it will affect every aspect of life. So there has to be that commitment.
When Rebecca and I got married last summer, I had gone to a wedding actually out in Montana a couple of years before that. And it was under a timber frame structure. And in this wedding, first of all, there was a lot of different things about the wedding. Number one, they mean it. They really, 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 really mean it. and that's unusual. Most weddings that I'm around, they like each other, and it's a real fun party, and I hope it works out. And they hope it works out too. But it's different. But what I really was drawn to was in a sermon, actually, in the message that Matt had shared in that wedding. He was talking about there's this union that's going to happen here, and these two timbers are going to come together, and they're going to form a bond that they wouldn't have on their own. But if you look up and look around, those two timbers are part of a much larger structure, and it will all fall if any of these do not remain. So you're not just committing to each other, you're committing to something larger. And when Rebecca and I were getting married, no one had ever said that. I've never even heard of such a thing. You know, maybe this idea that now you've married into a family and that's the family you're going to be part of forever. But just this idea that you're part of something much bigger than you, and your bond is part of a larger bond. And so when we were talking about getting married, we thought, well, would we do it here? Would we do it somewhere on the farm? There's lots of beautiful places. And I was like, no, I want to go somewhere where that is part of what we're thinking about. And so that even if we don't have the structure yet, even if God hasn't brought it to us, we know we're going to be part of it. Maybe one more question?
Right over here on the left.
Okay.
Hi there. I asked this because it's been I think 10 to 15 year struggle for myself, and that is the balance between having our own idea of what community looks like, making it about ourselves, our own plans and visions, and almost becoming an idol. I think on one ditch it can become idolatrous, and on the other, and a balance between that and what God would have for us and where He's placed us. An example of that for me is we lived in the city, not where I would have picked, but right across the street was this elderly woman with no family, and I sat with her as her husband died. I would have never planned that for myself. So how do you strike that balance?
Did you hear it? The balance between what you have an idea for community and somebody else has an idea for community, that kind of balance you're talking about?
The balance between our ideas and what we have in mind and what God has in mind and
Yes.
where He's placed us, whether that's on Homestead or not.
Well, I mean, I'll speak, and if any of you guys want to speak. I don't trust my idea. Mine's a bad idea. I've never seen it before. And I know a lot of people, and I've never seen it before. I've never seen it work or anything else. So I'm going to have to go look for it and find people who have done it for not just a little while, but for a long time. And I've got to be mentored and come under something. One of the things that I also loved when I started to find the possibility of community, it wasn't just that, I was just in a broader sense that community could encompass something else. And so I see it like it's sort of a back to the home movement, at least the community that I have in mind that I found with other people, is what if from birth to death we're meant to be together? What if birth to death we're meant to take responsibility for our lives? And so one of the things we're committing to, not because I like it, but because it seems to be the right way, we're all going to home birth together. We're not going to sign a piece of paper that has it. We just believe that God made us this way. They've done it forever until the last 50 years or 100 years. And just because I can set up a C-section and make it convenient on April 21st, maybe that's not the best way for everybody. And so what if home birth and home education and all the way through all the other things, working from home, raising our food from home together, as much of it as we can, all the way through taking care of our old people, taking responsibility to say, as our elderly age, what if that's our responsibility? Now, for me, I've seen that this is possible, and that's not my idea. It's like it's another idea. It feels like a whole idea But that's my idea of what community could be. And so I want to know how to do that. So what I would say is maybe we shouldn't trust our idea of community because we're probably like what you were saying, I want to get me a little more community.
Right. But Butch mentioned it earlier. An excellent resource is Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And one of the things he said in one of the opening chapters was, whoever has a wish dream of community is a destroyer of the ladder. Wow. When we come to community with a wish dream, and it's about us and our dreams, we will absolutely destroy it. Wow. Community is community through Jesus, is who he's propounding in that case, and none other. And so that offended me deeply when I read that, because I had not proven that my wish dream was the right one. I don't have a problem with that anymore. I actually find that very comforting to know that it's not of me, it's something bigger than me, and I'm trying to attach to it.
So let's wrap up. First off, thank you for coming in here and sitting through. Boy, that was a downpour, was it not?
Great, good experience.
And yet we hardly noticed it in some ways, and we sat through it, and what a blessing. And here we are on the other side of it. But I hope, if nothing else, what you take away is just the idea while you're growing food for your family, and while you're growing some independence, and that you perhaps community is something to think about. We could be part of and it could grow too. Please give a round of applause for all these guys up here. Rory McGrove, Hank Brown, Jimmy Jordan, Coach Timber. Thank you so much.